Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Natascha Viljoen, who's the Chief Executive Officer at Anglo American Platinum, who most of you would know are one of the biggest mining companies in the world and one of the world's largest primary producer of platinum, accounting for over a third of the world's annual supply. Natascha's has an engineering and processing background, working for some of the biggest mining companies in the world. And she is approaching her 10-year anniversary with Anglo American, having taken the CEO role back in 2020. And is here today to talk about Anglo American, her career, and the mining industry in South Africa. So let's welcome Natascha to the podcast. How are you doing, Natascha?
Hi, Rob. I'm doing well and quite delighted to be here with you today on Dig Deep.
Thank you, and I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy person, so I really appreciate your time. So you're one of the most visible faces in South African mining, in the South African mining industry, and obviously you're heading up one of the biggest PGM companies, and being one of the few women CEOs on the JSE, Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So I just wondered if you can tell us where it all began, a little bit about your career, and obviously starting, as I mentioned, from when you graduated, as your career's developed to where you are today. I just wanted to give our audience an overview of how your career has developed.
Rob, that's such an interesting question. I think mining is in my blood. My dad was a hoist driver at the gold mines. So I grew from an early age, and this was obviously years before we had all of the access control and safety measurements in place. As a girl going to school, I would join my dad to go to work on night shift. And after he's done his normal shift activities, him and I would walk out onto the bank area and see where the ore comes out from underground, smell the explosives, see the settling dams. That looks a little bit, it was always looked like cool and calm waters like what you see behind me. And I think that energy has started to resonate with me, and it created a bit of a curiousness about what this is all about. So if you think about where it started, that's where it started. And I don't think it's dissimilar to many other people in the mining industry. Many of us grew up in the shadow of the headgear. From there, I had such amazing opportunities throughout my career in the industry. We all know that the industry allows so much opportunity to grow your career and to make an impact. And not dissimilar, my situation was many people who gave me opportunities, who supported me in my growth and growth journey and in my career. And I had an opportunity to work across many different commodities, had an opportunity to work globally, and worked literally in every aspect of mining. So despite the fact that my background is in process engineering, I was a general manager at a mine. I ran corporate affairs for Lonmin during Marikana. So I literally had opportunities to try my hand at virtually every function in the industry.
So I just wondered if you can give an overview of Anglo American and obviously the Platinum division as obviously you're the CEO of the Platinum division. So I just wondered if you can give us a bit of context around obviously Anglo American and the Platinum division.
So Anglo American is a multi-commodity global mining company, and with footprint across South America, Australia, North America, and Sub-Saharan Africa. So within Anglo American, there are equally opportunities to work in some of the most interesting and most complex and diverse kind of environments and commodities. And I think Anglo Platinum is one such a commodity. I think your listeners would would agree with me that the platinum value chain is one of the most complex value chain from mining to refining. And then if you consider it being based in a country like South Africa with significant socioeconomic and socio-political challenges and the opportunity to make such an impact on the country, and then not only on the country, but the amazing application of the metals because of its attributes in creating a cleaner and greener future. So certainly a business that is committed to our purpose, reimagine mining to improve people's lives. We are absolutely driven by our values. And I think our purpose was clearly demonstrated through COVID, when as a broader Anglo American, guided by our purpose, we showed up, I think, in quite unique ways to support our employees and our host communities. And I think in the end of the day, it stood us in good stead. It stood us in good stand with how every colleague comes through our gates on a daily basis, and how we continue to create value and equitable value across all of our stakeholders, both our social stakeholders and our financial shareholders.
You took over the CEO position during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Just wondering if you just tell us a little bit more about that. And obviously the timing may not have been the best, but I just wondered if you can just explain you then moving into that position during obviously a difficult time.
Now, Rob, I think it's so relevant to who we are as a mining industry. So I walked into the role literally a week before we went into hard lockdown in South Africa. And not only did we have to deal with the global pandemic, but we also had our ICP unit down for a big breakdown. It was unplanned, and it took out 55% of the world's PGM production. So it was quite extraordinary times that I stepped into. But I think it's reflective of what I enjoy most about the industry we're in, is the complexity and the diversity that we get to deal with on a daily basis, and the amazing teams of people we work with. Because given and supported with the right resources, the people working in the mining industry in South Africa are resilient, they are innovative, they are agile, and they know how to adapt to very difficult circumstances. We saw how the mining industry supported the economic recovery of South Africa as a country. We saw how all of our colleagues returned to the workplace, adapted really quickly to new operating environment, new safety and health measures that we had to put in place. And we got these businesses up and running really, really well. And if you, on top of all of that, look at the industry safety performance over specifically the last year, if we think about coming through significant change into 2022 was the safest year in the history of mining in South Africa. We still, I need to point out, as an industry, lost 44 of our colleagues in industry due to fatal incidents, but it is the lowest in history. And as a company for Anglo American Platinum, we've seen some of the lowest injury frequency rates in the history of the company. And I think it all comes back to, as an industry, as I said, innovation, agility, resilience, and not only coming back and making a difference in the country, but doing it in a safe and sustainable way.
Yeah. Obviously, what were some of the major challenges you faced stepping into that CEO role during obviously that time 3 years ago? And also as the Platinum Group, what challenges have you faced over the last 3 years?
Yeah, so that's some interesting questions. So let's start with me personally. Yeah. I think personally, my biggest challenge is I got locked down in South Africa and my entire family got locked down in Australia. So, and as somebody who I've always said I will never live in Joburg, I woke up on the first morning of hard lockdown in the middle of Joburg, looking out, and there's just nothing, not a movement of a day. So personally, that took a minute for me to breathe and say, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? But obviously too late to turn around. And then it was around, how do we take decisions in a world where we don't have a clue what's coming our way? We do not know how this pandemic is going to develop. You hear all of these stories coming through on social media on how people are dying and people are losing loved ones, and we do not know where the end of this is. We also didn't have any income. And with a hard lockdown, most of our businesses obviously came to an end, and the mining industry was stopped as many other industries were. And we have 24,000 of our own employees and another 7,000 contracting employees that we're accountable for. That was probably one of those moments that you say, oh my gosh, how do I trade off long-term sustainability and protecting the balance sheet of a business whilst making sure we're doing the right thing to our colleagues? And I think, Rob, that is where something like a purpose then becomes so important for us to really test ourselves against our purpose. And again, as I said earlier, our purpose, reimagining mining to improve people's lives. And if ever that was a guiding light to say, well, this is how you should then approach it. And we did. We paid colleagues right through the entire pandemic. We continued to pay some of our vulnerable colleagues who couldn't come back to work for a long time after that. And we've seen some of the best financial performance in the history of our company. Now, and I think it was in that moment that you really don't know what the future holds, but you need to make decisions with the information that you have at hand. The next thing that then came is, how do we start up these operations safely? Again, do not have a clue on what this holds. Do not know how we put people back underground in confined spaces, and how we step through going out to sites, making sure that as far as humanly possible, we understand the impact or the environment our colleagues are going to come back to, and how we make it as safe as possible for them to come back into that environment, because safety is always top of mind. And as we slowly and very deliberately started up our operations, we obviously started to see how we now get cash flow back in the business and start to make a bigger impact to society, to government, and to our shareholders. The next one was then, and then I'll stop with that, and it's safety related, it's efficiency related, it's the technical guts of our business, was with our ICP, and ICP is an acronym for our Anglo Converter Plant. It's a bespoke design that we use here at Anglo Platinum. How do we operate a furnace that was meant to be stripped down to be rebuilt, and actually very tricky to operate safely? How do we operate this furnace safely whilst we rebuild the furnace where we had an explosion? And again, the teams, the technical resilience, technology, very deliberately stepping through every phase and every day, making deliberate decisions on, is it safe to continue to run or isn't it safe to continue to run? And by the end of the year, around middle October, the team came back and said, it's not safe. We cannot continue to run this furnace anymore. And we stopped. And we stopped the 55% of the global PGM production for close to a month, until the new furnace rebuild was done and we could safely start that up. And I think, Rob, those are the kind of decisions that there's always a balance, I think, between looking after the safety of our colleagues, looking after the reliability of our assets, while continuing to look after the value that we add to our shareholders and society. And it's always a very, very fine balance that we need to tread, I believe.
That brings us nicely on to sort of my next question. From your view, what sets Anglo American Platinum apart from some of your other mining companies in the same space?
Well, I'll end with the most important one, but the items I'm going to talk about is equally important, but I'll end with the most important one. But firstly, Anglo Platinum has got tier 1 assets. We, without a doubt, have the highest quality platinum mines or ore bodies available globally. We've looked far and wide, and we know that all of our assets are the best. It's long-term assets, minimum life of 30 years in terms of reserves, much longer in terms of resources. Not only do we have that, but we also have an integrated value chain into a processing division. Now, that integrated mine through to processing is something that is really important in the PGM industry, because it brings a real strategic advantage as a barrier to entry into the market. And it is something that we need to protect in terms of the asset reliability of those assets, and making sure that you will know the mining renews all the time. You blast, you get a new working area. You blast, you get a new working area. When it comes to your assets, your fixed assets, your mobile assets to a large extent is the same. You can replace big portions of your truck, but basically there is a unit that you can replace. The moment you get into fixed assets, the maintenance and reliability of those assets are really important. So how you link the life and your asset strategy on maintenance to the full life of asset of our mines. And with mines that, as I say, 30 years, 50 years, this is what we need to protect in terms of the asset integrity of all of our assets. So I think that's the first portion of it. The second portion is, obviously we do have the capital and the trust of our investors to continue to make the right capital decisions. And I believe we've got a very strong capital allocation framework, where how we take decisions around the sustainability of our business, the life extension of our business, and then growth, how we pull the whole ESG into taking capital allocation, making capital allocation, and then making sure that we give the due returns to our shareholders. We are one of only a handful of mining companies that in the last 2 decades, dollar for dollar or rand for rand, invested as much capital into the business as we have returned to our shareholders. And I think that's underpinned by our strong capital allocation framework. And then lastly is people. Acknowledging that the ore bodies we're working with belongs to the people of the country. We are endowed with those assets and entrusted to extract maximum value in a sustainable manner. We're using the capital of our investors to enable us to do that, but without our people and the communities in which they live in, we won't be able to do it. If we're talking innovation, if we're talking the technical expertise, the excellence in extracting metal out of our ore body. And I've, in my 32-year career, had an opportunity to work with many teams. This team is unique in their ability to deal with adverse conditions, not only through what the global pandemic threw at us or the challenges within a mining environment, but also the challenges within a South African context, that we don't only take it on, learn, live, and get better through that. We also continue to impact and making sure that we play our role in making South Africa better.
You recently announced that you're going to be leaving Anglo American Platinum to take up a COO role at Newmont. What have been your achievements and failures at Anglo American Platinum?
I think, firstly, our safety record. I have to point out that, and I will never get bullish when we talk about safety. It is with a deep sense of gratitude that I'm able to say that we've made some real inroads in our safety performance. Secondly, and going hand in hand, is that we've made a fundamental change in the culture of this business. It is a culture where we're working, and we will never be perfect. It is a big team of people, and it takes a long time to really entrench a culture. But we have made significant inroads in building a culture where people are physically and mentally safe to come to work on a daily basis through changing the way we work. Culture is not something that is a kumbaya session or a soft approach. It is in our systems and processes and changing that so that people are coming to work, they're safe to do their work, and they are ready and empowered to do a productive day's work. That's our contract, right? That's our basic contract between us as an employer and our colleagues coming through the gate. And I think through system changes, we've made a significant impact on the culture. We've put back a number of basic building blocks. Now I'm talking to a mining society. I'm talking mining 101. And I think that's probably the one thing that I always feel most sad about, that as an industry, we always go through these cycles. We get all of the building blocks in place and we're really good, and then for some reason it falls off, and then we start and we build it up again. And we were in a building cycle. So we had to put many of the building blocks in place, and I trust that the team now has got a really good platform to move forward at pace. What do I regret? I regret the fatalities that we had. We lost 4 of our own colleagues, another 4 of our non-managed, 4 colleagues in our non-managed JVs. If I can turn the clock back and I can work harder in the first couple of months to prevent all of that from happening, I think that is certainly my biggest regret. I think the ability to move faster to put some of these building blocks in place, because we were still until very recently busy to figure out what some of these building blocks that weren't in place. And moving faster would have allowed us to be better prepared now for a period of downturn in commodity prices. I think those are definitely some of my learnings and some of the reflections that I will take forward.
What are you looking forward to about moving to the US and Newmont?
Yeah, I think to think about what I'm looking forward to is certainly I need to start with, it's a bittersweet moment for me, and it's also with significant regret that I'm lifting my roots out of South Africa and moving abroad. I think what I'm regretting most is exiting an industry that is complex and vibrant in terms of the PGM industry. I know that I'm going to miss so many aspects of this business. I'm going to miss my team. Every rock drill operator I sat down and had conversations around mining underground, up to my direct team in the Platinum Management Committee. And I'm going to miss my country. The reality is my roots run deep into this country, and lifting that and moving is never an easy thing. But I'm absolutely committed to continue to shine the light for South Africa and the benefits and value that we have as a country to add to the globe in terms of the energy transition, the minerals that we have that will play a critical role in the energy transition. And our ability to export renewables. And I know as South Africans, we cringe and say, oh my gosh, we don't even have enough energy for ourselves. The reality is, if we can see beyond our current challenges, because we will get beyond the current challenges, the future holds so much more for us because of the benefits we have in our country, not due to our mineral resources, but also our natural resources in sun and wind. And I will certainly continue to shine a light on the real needs and the real capabilities and abilities from our country. And I'm looking forward to the next step in my career. I'm going to work in jurisdictions I've never worked in. I am going to draw from the lessons and the learnings that I got from the South African industry, and I will have an opportunity to apply that in many different jurisdictions. I will have an opportunity to work in the mining industry in the developed world that I've never had an opportunity to. And I'm certainly most looking forward to apply all the skills and knowledge that I've obtained while working in this amazing country and an amazing company.
What do you think the South African mining industry will remember you for?
What will they remember me for? I think some people will probably feel upset with my narrative around renewables. But I'm hoping that I will be remembered for the fact that we brought change into the industry, change on how we collaborate in the industry, change how we look at an inclusive and diverse workplace, change in our approach to gender-based violence in the industry, and the work that we've done in leading the market development work to ensure future markets for our metals as we maneuver through the energy transition.
I know it's Women's Month in South Africa. With Women's Day being celebrated on the 9th of August, can you tell me what's about, I suppose, what's important about being a South African woman mean to you?
Rob, if I look at the South African women around me and I look at some of my colleagues, the likes of Nolita Fukudi and the likes of Mpumi Zikalala and my direct team, Virginia Chubeka and Yvonne Mfolu and Nomondi on the call here with us, is it is women that brings with them the history of the struggle, understanding what it needs, what it takes to fight for your rightful place in the sun. Not only from where we came from racially, but also where we came from a full inclusion and diversity point of view. When I talk to women underground, I've recently been underground at Amandelbult, and I had the opportunity to talk to two female locomotive drivers. They start their morning 3 o'clock in the morning so that they can get to work, do a full productive, safe day's work to look after their families. Those are the kind of resilience that I believe is inherent to South African women. We work through all of the different cultural diversities that we have as a country. Now, with 11 official languages, that is the cultural diversity we're talking about, and each of them comes with its own societal expectations and different expectations from women. But we get up in the morning, we put our lipstick on, we arrive at work, and we do a proper day's work, very often under very difficult circumstances where the pathway is not always clear. But the women in the mining industry stand up and they make themselves count. They don't run away, even from GBV. And I was reminded just this morning about a conversation I had with a senior woman working underground a mine, and she was wearing a one-piece overall on the day that we went underground. And I was curious about it because as in being in the mining industry for so long, we've worked really hard to get PPE that's suited for women, and generally women say, well, they want a two-piece overall because it's easier to maneuver underground. And so I was curious, why you're not wearing a two-piece overall? And her reflection was, it's more difficult to get a one-piece off in case I get sexually assaulted underground. Now, that's a senior woman in the industry. But the reality is she's still there. She's still there. She's still making an impact. She's working through all of those adversities. And she is breaking ceilings for women to come after her. And that is what makes me to be really proud of women in this country, not only in our industry, is the absolute can-do resilience. We're going to stick it out, we're going to make it work, and we're going to path the way for women to follow.
What advice can you give any female mining professionals in our industry who wants to strive and be where you are, maybe heading up a major mining company?
I think, Rob, that's for women and probably any young person entering into the mining industry. I think at the core is be curious about what the industry is about. Go and learn from the people who make the work happen on a daily basis. There's no better coaches and mentors in this industry than the rock drill operators and the artisans and the operators in the plant. They understand the business. They know how to do that. That's the first one. Secondly, and as I said earlier, be advocates and support your fellow women in the workplace. We have seen significant improvements in the representation of women in the workplace. And the more we support each other, both inside the workplace and outside the workplace, we will continue to change the culture and the physical workplace to be more suitable for full inclusion and diversity. And interestingly enough, it very often makes the workplace safer and healthier for everybody, not only for women. And no job is ever too big or too small. Get dirt under your fingernails. The one thing that it has been clear for me as I took steps in my career, it also always looked very elaborate and very glamorous to have the CEO designation. The reality is, in the end of the day, the CEO, like an operator, has a job to do. We have accountabilities that we need to pull through on a daily basis. It takes hard work and diligence, and there's no shortcut to that. There's absolutely no shortcut. Take the time, get dirt under your fingernails. Don't ever say no for a job, doesn't matter how big or small it is. And lastly, draw your boundaries. In a world that we know that GBV, gender-based violence, is still a pandemic in our environment, do not be afraid to draw your boundaries. Be very clear on what those are, and you will be respected for it. And where those boundaries are transgressed, take the courage and speak up, and let's continue to support each other to be able to speak up in the workplace.
I've got two more questions. What do you think the outlook is for the South African mining industry in, I suppose, the short and medium term?
Rob, I think in the near term, it's going to be challenging. We've seen a drop in commodity prices. We've seen inflationary pressures coming through. We've seen the rand weakening. All of those factors certainly playing a big role in putting quite a bit of pressure on the margins for the industry. We've seen the industry doing as much work as they could whilst the commodity prices were higher. At the same time, in this process, we're going through all of the challenges that we have: crime and corruption in our country, infrastructure, both rail, roads, and of course, energy. I should have actually said energy, rail, and roads. But as an industry, we've always been impactful to play a role in those areas, and we've seen how partnerships with our government are developing really well, and how these partnerships are paying its way in addressing these real issues that we have. So we don't have the luxury of standing back and say we don't want to address these. Whilst we have the inflationary pressures, we have to do the work to address these challenges. And as we work through this, it is important for us to obviously keep an eye on the safety and sustainability of our industry, and making sure that we do the right fundamental work to address the inflationary pressures, as well as the operating environment that we're operating in. And then lastly, the political uncertainty. We're going into elections next year, and we can see how this political uncertainty is already playing itself out in so many ways. And without a doubt, as an industry, we are always impacted by that environment that we operate in.
And lastly, what's the outlook for yourself, obviously over the next short and medium term? Obviously, you're moving to the US. What kind of achievements do you want to I suppose work towards over the coming 3 to 5 years?
Gosh, that's a big question. Well, firstly, I want to. I'm very excited about my successor's appointment, Craig Miller. I think it's so well deserved. He has been part of how we shaped this company over the last, with me all of this time. He's been part of all of the challenges we're working through. So I think really well deserved, and good continuity for him to continue the work that we started in the last 3.5 years. Then I want to get my feet under the table at Newmont and truly make use of the learnings of my 32-year career, and understand how I get value out of those, and giving value back to to another amazing team of people. I was very deliberate in my decision making around Newmont, understanding their purpose, understanding their values, getting to know key members of their teams. That was an important decision making for me. And I can only hope and trust that I will take the learnings and help to develop people and develop that company further. And who knows, you're doing the best job you can in the moment that you're at, and the future will look after itself. And I believe that there's still, I still have 10 years left in the industry, and I'm still intending to use that to continue to make an impact.
Great. Natascha, really thank you. Appreciate your time for coming onto the podcast, sharing your story and your successes and also failures, which you highlighted, and really wish you well in your new venture in the US and with Newmont. So really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Robin. It's been a pleasure, and all the best for everybody in the industry. Exciting times ahead, no doubt.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Obviously, you can follow Anglo American Platinum story via their website if you want to see any updates in what they're looking to achieve, and obviously their operations as well. So really appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes amongst people within the industry, but also people outside of the industry, to show what mining is about, and how it benefits our everyday, day-to-day living. So really appreciate your continued support. And until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.